So a couple different ways I can do this. I can keep her body here, and then I can duplicate this off, kind of like we did with Finn and his head, and just kind of bump out these areas here. But I'm going to skip a little bit of that, and I'm just going to start making her clothes right now. Let's go ahead and clean this side up too. So I'm going to hit C to sample these dark lines, and we'll kind of match these up here, and then match these up, and then C to sample this. We'll just clean up this, C to sample that. There we go. So a couple different ways we can do this. I can use Z-Remesh or topology brush to kind of rebuild this stuff, or, and there's actually more ways to do it than that, or I can go ahead and just mask off her arms and her chest area. And I think I'm going to do that. I'm also going to paint out, so hit C. I'm going to paint out our jewel for now because that's just going to be a simple insert at the very end. So I'm more concerned about what the shape is underneath here. There we go. So this is pretty clean. I think pretty understandable of what we're going to do next. So I'm going to go ahead and mask. Just use mask. Let's do mask lasso. Hold down Control and just go up to the lasso area. And if I control and start dragging around, then I can hit spacebar to kind of move this around. And then if I need to, and then I can just kind of mask that area here and go back to mask pin. And hold down Control Alt and just tap. And what that's doing is mask sharpen. So if you go to your masking menu here, you're going to see there's a blur mask and a sharpen mask. Hold down Control and tap, that blurs it. Hold down Control Alt and tap, and that sharpens it. And then you can just go in here with your mask pin and kind of just mask this little area here. So we've got our arms in there. Oops. Unmask here, Control Alt to kind of sharpen that mask up. And then kind of clean this up a little bit here. There we go. So we got our arms masked. I'm going to go into Polyframe Mode here. And this is masked. If I go up here and I turn off her paintbrush here, which turns off her poly paint, you're going to see she's all one poly group. And if I hit Control W, again, that's doing the group mask clear mask in your polygroup menu. So anything that was masked gets its own polygroup now. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. Turn poly paint back on. I'm going to do the exact same thing for her body. So I'm just going to mask this. And let's go and turn Polyframe off temporarily. I'm going to mask this. And we're just going to split her body off. Now I don't have to be that careful because I can just go in here and just kind of mask down to this area. And then hold down Control. And I can just hit S to make my draw size bigger. And then hold down Control. And then I can just mask a little bit more. And then again, Control Alt tap to kind of sharpen that up a little bit, and we'll make this a little pointier here. Holding down Control Alt. There we go. So we've got all this done. I'm going to hit Control W. That'll make it its own polygroup. Control Shift. Go into Select Rectangle, and now I can pop her arms and her upper body into their own subtool. So a couple different ways I can do that. If I turn off the paintbrush again, you're going to see she has pretty distinct polygroups. So if I wanted to, I could go over here to split. I could do a group split, and every polygroup would go into its own subtool. I could also hold down Control Shift and isolate, and then I could do a split hidden, and then I can Alt tap this one, and then Control Shift to isolate, split hidden. Any number of ways you want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and select a white again. Turn off Polyframe. So now I have a hold down Alt and tap. I've got all these different pieces. Now you're going to want to be careful here because let's say I select her dress here. And she still has Dynamesh properties, so if I hold down Control and drag, it'll go ahead and Dynamesh that and just turn it into a Dynamesh where it closes the holes automatically. But if I turn on the paintbrush, I have lost my poly paint. So I'm going to undo that, turn on my poly paint, Control drag, and now it'll Dynamesh and keep my poly paint. The arms, I don't really have a need to keep the poly paint around, so I'm just going to Control drag, and that'll give me that. And then her head, same deal. I can keep her face, I suppose, and then Control drag, and that'll give me a Dynamesh. Now, in this case, when I did that, it made it very thin and kind of webby up here because it was a very thin mesh. So I'm going to undo that. And on this particular case, what I'm going to do is go down to Geometry, Modify Topology, hold down Shift and close some of these menus here. And then we'll go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and I'm going to do a Close Holes. Now, when I Dynamesh, it does close holes automatically and give me a polygroup, but just to show you what it's doing, I'll hit the Close Hole button. And if I go into my polyframe here, you're going to see when it closes a hole, it doesn't do it across the axis. So if you want to make sure it's mirrored, just do a quick mirror and weld, or for you, Modify Topology, mirror and weld button right here, and then it'll make that symmetrical. I can now hold down Control Shift and isolate just the Close Holes section. Control Tap to mask that, Control Shift to bring everything else back, Control Shift and Tap, and then Control Tap to invert that mask, and then I can hit W, tap a surface face to kind of get a normal. I'm just going to pull down just to give it a little bit of thickness so when I Dynamesh it doesn't get all thin and webby. And also I'm going to go to the side here, select an anchor point, drag out, and then hold down Shift and just kind of non-uniformly scale that. Again, I'm not using scale, I'm actually using move, which is W, to non-uniformly scale. Scale I really just use to uniformly scale. That's E. So W, non-uniformly scale that in, control drag again, and now I've got some thickness in here to kind of give me a little bit of breathing room, and I can go ahead and smooth that out if I want to. Go out of solo mode, and now I've got her dress, her arms, and her head.